Hi, this is Daphne Wiles, and I'm one of the course mentors for MZC1. And this is a recorded webinar that will cover the intentional teacher, which is part of Chapter 1 in the e-text. The learning objectives for the intentional teacher are to be able to identify ways that a teacher can use research in order to inform his or her practice in a classroom. Also, to be able to analyze some applications of being able to put research or theory into practice when given certain scenarios. And then finally, to be able to analyze instances of teaching as informed decision making when given scenarios. So, some main points from the intentional teacher. One is that teachers are supposed to have content knowledge. This means that they need to know their subject very well, but they also need to have pedagogical knowledge. And a way that this was described to me one time is that content knowledge is knowing what to teach, and pedagogical knowledge is knowing how to teach. For instance, you might understand reading very well, of course, especially at, say, a third grade level. But when you enter a third grade classroom as a teacher, you may have students who are reading on a kindergarten level or even lower than that, all the way up to an eighth grade or higher level. And you need to be able to know how to teach reading effectively to all of those different students. You also have to know about students' different interest levels. So some students will really like reading, others won't like reading. So how do you help each child succeed? And that that knowledge of instruction or knowledge of how to reach students and help them to be successful, that is really the crux of pedagogical knowledge. Intentionality in a teacher means that everything that teacher does has a purpose. In schools today, students have recess, they've got specials such as PE and music and art and library. They have lunch, they've got transition periods, and by the time you take all of that time out, there really isn't a lot of time left for actual instruction. So every minute really has to be used for the good of the students. And there are some old teaching practices that are ineffective strategies. For instance, using a class period to go over every homework assignment question. That can take a very long time, and there may be students who don't even, where nobody in the class needs to understand that particular question. Maybe everyone got it right, and so taking the time to go over that is ineffective, and it's a waste of the student's time. Another ineffective strategy is to have one student come up and work out a very long problem on the board while all of your other students sit and just wait and watch. There are ways to turn some ineffective strategies into effective strategies. For instance, if you have one child working a problem out on the board, then you can have students that are in the rest of the class working out a problem on their own. Then they could get into cooperative groups and discuss their problem. So there are ways to take, even if you have a practice that you really enjoy, but you realize that some students may not be benefiting from that, there's still a way to turn that practice for being ineffective into effective. You just want, when you analyze your teaching practices, you want to make sure that all of your strategies are being used to help move all students forward at all times, if possible. Teacher efficacy. That is the belief that a teacher can have an impact on a student, and that what the teacher does makes a difference. And it's very important to have teacher efficacy because teachers need to believe that their own efforts are the key to children's learning. And it's incredibly important for teachers to believe that what they do makes a difference, because otherwise they're much more apt to stop trying. They're able to build the sense of efficacy by reviewing the results of their own instruction and trying out some new strategies. So, you may try something in your classroom, and if it doesn't work, then you stop and kind of reflect on why it didn't work, and then really modify your teaching so that maybe next time it will work a little bit better. So critical thinking is a very important part of being an intentional teacher. This means that you're always looking at your lessons and your training and professional development opportunities and conversations that you have, and you're constantly reviewing these things and seeing if you have a deficit and then working to correct that deficit. And you're just always critically evaluating your lessons and you as a professional and your teaching situation so that you can constantly be improving. Um, Now, the book talks about before you can become an intentional teacher, you have to become a certified teacher. And that usually involves earning some sort of a bachelor's degree, usually some sort of student teaching or demonstration teaching. And then there are certification tests, and these are different for different states. So those are things that you're definitely going to want to look into as you start nearing the end of your degree plan. Um, and then also part of being an intentional teacher is staying current. So find some mentors in the field, people that you can look up to, people who have been successful, who you view as being intentional teachers. Seek out professional development opportunities. So look for, there's some online conferences. There are conferences that will be local, some will be national. Maybe pick out some activity or some opportunities where you can learn new activities to bring into your classroom, where you can learn about new research that's happening, ways that you can apply that to your classroom. So those professional development opportunities are really your way to stay current in your practice. Also, talk teaching, and this, you want to make sure that you're talking with other people about what's working in your classrooms, what isn't working in their classrooms, finding out, did they try out a new activity, a new book, a new series, and so by sharing those ideas with your colleagues, it'll just help you to refine your teaching practice. And then finally, there are professional publications. Those are usually journals and associations. So, for instance, NAGC is the National Association for Gifted Children. So if you have a particular interest in gifted learners, then you may want to join that professional association. There are associations for mathematics, for science, for special needs children, for English language learners. So you can find all sorts of professional associations, and most of those will have a professional publication that will go along with it. All right, that's about it for the intentional teacher. If you have any questions, please feel free to email a course mentor at our shared inbox, and that is edpsych@wgu.edu. Thanks so much.